Hi, this is Doug Manch, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
See this episode's show notes for our unique promo code to get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn when you sign up for a new account. Get your show on Apple and Spotify, get helpful stats, and all the support you need to sound your very best.
Hello world, it's time to open the green door and enter the strongest podcast there is, Gamma Charge.
Twice a month, Russell and I dive into the history of the Incredible Hulk in comics, film, TV, games, and more.
That's right, Justin, and we rate and review all the Jade Giants media, good and not so good, with a smash or a gamma clap. And we put on the rant pants when we just can't take it.
And join us on Patreon to get exclusive bonus podcasts, prizes, and more at patreon.com/Gamma Charge Hulk Podcast.
We will see you real soon, Gamma Beasts. Stay green.
Gamma Charge.
The strongest podcast there is.
Hi, I'm Erica Schultz, and you're listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast.
Welcome back, loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 335. Of course, returning are the High Priest Conchu, myself, Ray, and Rebecca. How are you going, Rebecca?
I'm all right. Good. I'm like,
good.
It's a different time of day for me, but I'm pretty good.
You're a trooper.
Yes, very much a trooper. Well, Rebecca, you're riding a high, a victory, England. Got to say, World Cup women's,
what
loving
can I
it.
say? I mean, I'm sorry. I think the Matildas did great. Like I haven't really watched them much either.
It was a good effort,
and it was a great game, I thought. And I know that most of them play in England for clubs here. So, and one of the England teams from Milton Keynes. So, even more.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
Very happy.
It's pretty much.
There's a lot of celebrating, and it's always better. It's always good when they do better than the guys. Is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah. I mean, it always happens in Australia. Don't worry. Winners are grinners, loony listeners, and I am so happy to welcome back. Also, comic book writer, creator, recent and current, writer of a Moon Knight story, Erica Schultz. Erica, welcome.
Hi. I just heard the Doug Mensch doing the opening. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, Ray's done really well. He's got us some really cool ones. You never know; he might hit you up for one sometime.
I will happily. And people will be like, "Who the hell is Erica Schultz?"
No, trust me. Like Moon Knight fandom is like we know. Like you can imagine. It's like it's not. I wouldn't say obsessive, but there's not that much Moon Knight in the whole, like the grand scheme of things. So people know, and not that many women have had a hand in Moon Knight. So stand out a bit more there as well.
I will say this: I'm going to Dragon Con in a few weeks, and Sal Valuto's like 3 tables down from me.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Freaking out.
My god,
that's amazing. That's the best thing about
Sal Valuto he's literally, I'm 1 table in from the corner and he's like across the aisle from me.
Oh, across the it's even better across the aisle, so you can kind of like wait.
Well, I told my friend, I said, when I go and I meet him and I introduce myself, you have to make sure I don't make don't like come off as an ass. And he's like, you'll be fine. I was like, no, because look where he's sitting. I will be stuck the entire weekend.
Yeah, you have to make a good impression.
And he'll just be like, oh, there's that idiot.
And comics people are generally nice and forgiving, That's awesome.
I'm pretty scared. I'm pretty scared but jazzed at the same time.
Yeah, no, it should be great. I mean, for Looney listeners, you would know, of course, Sal Valuto had a hand in some early Mark Spector Moon Knight. Yeah, and also my favorite run from him was the Black Panther run with Christopher Priest. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Iconic run.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we are here, of course, with Erica to talk about her recently released. It's just dropped, hot off the press. A What If issue? What If Dark Moon Knight? So yeah, I mean, this episode will have some spoilers. I know it's just been released, but by the time you hear this, hopefully you would have picked yourself up a copy. And we have a great opportunity here to dive deep with Erica into this. Erica, before we get into it, actually, I wanted to kick off with some of the listener questions, just because
Sure.
I didn't want to steal any, and yeah, I didn't want to steal any of their thunder, because they have asked some great questions. Yeah. So I'll lead off here. The first one, and this may be obvious, Threading Fate, once you do read it, but Threading Fate did say, did you do any Moon Knight research, like rereading, prior to this story, Erica? And
Absolutely.
if so, yeah, which ones gave you like the most inspiration?
I've read most of Moon Knight just in general. I I haven't gotten up to date with what Jed MacKay is writing currently, because it's not on the Marvel Unlimited app just yet. But
Yeah.
I read all of Sienkiewicz's work. I read, Don Heck, Doug Mensch, the Greg Hurwitz stuff. So I really liked the Chuck Sticks and Sal Valuto work because the DID started getting really complicated. Like
Yeah.
in the mid to late 80s, things started getting really complex, and it was just getting kind of like out of hand. And the fact that they just went back, Mark Spector Moon Knight started #1 in 89, I think. And I also liked this because Marlene was not a shrinking violet.
Yes.
She was kick ass.
Started to come into her own a bit more then.
Yeah,
Exactly. She started having more personality. She
I
wasn't
think it's
just
like that shift in the 80s where we started realizing a bit more about representation as well. And,
Yeah.
the same with the DID. It all started to like shift a little bit more into like maybe we shouldn't be writing them like we were in the 70s.
And I think that that's important, and it was definitely something that you could feel. So this particular issue of What If, and I was very lucky to work with Edgar Salazar again, because Edgar and I had worked on X-23 Deadly Regenesis together. So it was great that he was available to work on this with me again. And I really loved the first arc where Marlene gets kidnapped and by Bushman, but she's not just like, oh, poor me. No, she's like arguing with him and fighting. And there's this fabulous scene in issue #3 of Mark Spector Moon Knight #3, where she is in this bluish bikini and she's holding an AK, and she's just like, Marlene's here, lover, because he's like beating the crap out of Bushman, being like, where is she? Where is
Yeah.
she? She's like, Marlene's right here, lover. And she's like shooting people with this gun. And I was like, oh my God, sexy woman with a machine gun. It's amazing. So I wanted to get that in.
Mhm.
So I talked to Martin Biro, who was the editor, and I said, I was like, there has to be a way that we can do this. And he's like, well, if you want to base it off of this issue, let's see what happens. And I was like, all right, this is my in. And and I gave them a few different scenarios, just generalized, but
Yeah.
once I really honed in on what was happening, I was like, this is the specific issue that we're going to be referencing. Like, this is the
Yeah.
Yeah.
specific moment. And Martin actually came up with this great idea of having Khonshu being the sort of Uatu figure in the old What Ifs.
Yeah, that was
Right.
good. I like that
That
touch.
works so well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that that was a really great idea, and I love how he's just sort of always in this sort of like full moon cast, panel, just sort of like an inset panel and everything. And Edgar did such a fabulous job of not aping Salvaluto, but
hmm
homaging. Like, okay,
It's
so
so good. I mean, the art is so good in this.
and what I did was, I mean, I basically, like, we gave Edgar the whole issue
hmm
just in general, and then there were specific things that I wanted, and I wanted Marlene in the bikini. I will tell you, I have the emails to prove it. I fought for Marlene in the bikini,
Yes.
and the editor was like, "No, we can't do that. We're going to get crucified." And I'm like, "I will. This is a hill I'm going to die on." And he's like, "Well, we're not doing it. She could be in cutoffs and a tank top." I was like, "It's not the same."
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of agree with you. I actually think I don't think there would have been a pushback on it. Like,
I
given the rest of the issue, especially. But I mean, like, I like the outfit with the tank top and the
Yeah,
calves.
the
But
tank top and shorts, they're fine. But like I just like have this dream of somebody like cosplaying. I mean, hopefully they will wear flip-flops because, convention floors are
on the floors,
disgusting.
yeah.
But like somebody cosplaying like in a blue bikini with like a fake, you know,
Yeah,
machine gun. I think that would, to me, I would be like, that is like the like deep, deep, deep dive.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, they fought me on putting her in a bikini. It was sad.
Yeah, which is a shame because like I'm right with you there, Erica. I think because I've got in my notes here, it was this issue was very much like a love letter to the '90s. I thought, and it really played well on that. And I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that Salazar's art is a homage to Veluto's because I very much kind of picked up on that, and I just love the whole style of the writing. So I would have thought like having Marlene in that accurate kind of bikini from the 80s 90s would have been awesome, but yeah, it was.
I will say this was the excuse that the editor gave me. And I say excuse like as a rude way. Martin has been fabulous to work with. I
Mhm.
worked with him also on the Moon Knight Black, White, and Blood. So I'm saying this in like a lovingly teasing way. But Martin said, if we're changing the story, where Mark dies, then we can change her outfit. And I was like, it's not a good enough excuse. I
Uh,
actually, you know what I was thinking? It's funny though, because I was like, should I just ask Edgar, like, should I just commission Edgar to do a commission piece for me of
Yes,
that'd be
of
cool.
Marlene and Mark and have Marlene in the bikini,
give me
like
with
with the
the
gun?
yeah.
Like, I'm like, I think I just might do that. So Edgar, you're gonna be getting an email from me soon. So
Just also tracking back, Erica, you mentioned about you had some ideas that you were pitching to Martin before it kind of honed in on this story based on issue 3. Um, yeah. What was a process? Just for those that are curious, was there an expression of interest for writers to pitch ideas for Moon Knight, or was it something that you approached like Martin saying, "Hey, I'd love to write a Moon Knight issue.
I
This is
had
what I'm."
actually met Martin, Annalise, and Tom Brevoort when I had written a short for Moon Knight Black,
Mhm.
White, and Blood, um, and Dave Lopez lovingly illustrated it, and
That was
so
a great issue.
yeah, issue number 3, and that from that moment, I had always impressed on them because I had actually gone after that. Someone had told me that they were going to be doing the anthology, and I, you know, just sort of tracked down. I emailed one editor and said, "I know it's not you. Uh, can you point me in the right direction?" And they were kind enough to point me in the right direction. And then I,
It's awesome.
puffed up my chest and said, "Tom Brevoort, I really want to write Moon Knight. Please, please, please." Um, and it was like, "Let's see what you got, kid," kind of moment. Um, so Martin had actually come to me and said, "Hey, would you like to write any more Moon Knight?" And I'm like, "Would you? like 400 cheeseburgers because of course. And so he said we're going to be doing some what if darks, and we're going to be doing a Moon Knight one, and let's see a couple of ideas. So I mean, I really wanted to work with Marlene just in
hmm
general, just because I think that she was an underserved character for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think the Mark Spector Moon Knight, um, that run, well, I mean, it was obviously Chuck Dixon and Sal Valuto that went for I want to say 25 issues, and JMD Mateus and Howard Mackey had a bit of a run at it, and JMD Mateus wrote some stuff for it as well. But I mean, they really fleshed out Marlene a lot more, and it really made me want to work with her more. So there was a couple of ideas of what if, Marlene was shot in the desert and
hmm
Mark dragged her to Khonshu and she became Moon Knight, or what if, Mark lost his memory and Marlene took up the mantle of Moon Knight, because Mark kept dreaming about these weird things
Yeah.
but didn't know what they were about. But it was Marlene who was actually the one who's physically doing all the work. And there were a couple of different ways that I had done it. I will say this is a big spoiler. So there was a scene where Spence was a little more involved in one of the original drafts. And for those who don't know who Spence was, during Mark Spector Moon Knight, Spence was Mark's assistant, sort
hmm
of, where
Yes.
he was like an art buyer.
Yeah. I think
Because they
was
really
sorry.
no,
I,
it's okay.
I was just sorry, but say he's a bit as early as Vista Conchu as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, I
Spence?
believe
Yep.
so. Yeah.
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 But in the Mark Spector Moon Knight, there's Chloe who's like the housekeeper.
Mhm.
They don't
Oh,
have
that's right.
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
yeah, Chloe, you want to talk about wearing a bikini? Chloe the
Yeah,
housekeeper,
exactly.
who
Exactly.
ends up with Frenchie.
Yes.
Samuels is sort of here and there in Mark Spector Moon Knight, but Spence is basically like somebody who's working with Mark and working for Mark and sort of acquiring all these pieces of art. And so we see a party that Marlene is having in Mark's honor, and we see Frenchie and Spence and Samuels. But the page before that originally was we had seen Marlene beating the crap out of people, and then it was a 9-panel grid that was sort of cross-cutting between Marlene putting makeup on to
Wow. Just I'm just getting
okay.
it, Erica. Just might as well. And I can't believe I've forgotten about it. But
It's okay.
yes. So
So
Yes.
okay, so we keep going, one more page. All right, so we see Marlene kicking ass. Originally, right after this page, instead of seeing her right at the party, we saw there was it was completely narrated by Frenchie and Spence,
hmm Oh, that's
and
cool. Yeah.
okay.
and the two of them were talking about how worried they were about her, and you saw her putting makeup on and covering the bruises from the
Right.
fight,
Right.
and everything. And then there was a moment, and I know it took up too much time, and it's a superhero comic, so we needed more action, and I get that. But there was a moment before you see her at the top of the stairs. Frenchie, she has that long scarf on.
hmm
Originally, Frenchie was wearing that scarf, and he saw her and he puts it around her
Ah,
shoulders
Oh, that's
because
really
and
sweet.
says, "You missed a spot."
Oh,
nice.
I love
Nice.
So
I
so
love that.
that was the original moment, was that, and that's where she had gotten that long pashtouche, that
Yeah.
scarf.
Yeah.
And that was the original intent behind it, was that Frenchie sees her, he and Spencer talking, and she says, "What are you talking about?" And then we have this reveal of her looking gorgeous, and he goes over and he gives her a kiss on each cheek, and as he does, he sees over her shoulder that she missed a spot on her back, and he
Ah,
takes his scarf off and he wraps it around her shoulders, and
yeah.
he just whispers, "You missed a spot."
Oh,
Oh,
that's so cool.
I love
I
that.
got like just goosebumps kind of listening to, because I love the way that you portrayed Frenchie as well, and just
Yeah, but
hearing
I
that
also love
now.
that sort
Yeah.
of some of the reality of being
Yeah.
a hero without sort of super serum is things like how do
Mm.
they hide the pieces, and especially relevant for women who then have to go to a party. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
how do you
Exactly.
cover up?
Exactly.
And it's just, and it's also that's such a nice way of him showing that he's looking after her as well.
and
But
and
not
he
being sort of
promised and he
too
promised
paternalist
Mark that
about
he
it.
would.
Yeah, exactly. But he's also just he's not saying don't do it, but he's saying here, let me
Yeah.
just help you with this little bit.
I just
Yeah.
love it. 'Cause he's like the the sidekick or the companion that just goes about his business, but he has that heart to him as well. That like there's this panel here when he is crying. We see the death of Mark here as they fly away in the chopper, and Frenchie's there. He's doing his job and stuff, but he feels for these people, his friends as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
really enjoyed. I just wanted to show just there because we were talking about it. There's that shot of Marlene.
Yeah.
Tank top and jeans cut off or shorts there. So awesome stuff. It really opens up awesomely. Is that a
I
word,
mean, the
Erica? I
comic
don't know.
comes out quite a good time as well because we're missing all these characters quite a lot. Like I mean, I love the current run. So, but it's just nice to be able to see Frenchie and Marlene and just go back to that, having them as the sort of Moon Knight crew, even though in this case they're in the What If crew.
Yeah, it just feels so comforting to see, and the likes of Samuels as well. You
Yeah,
know, the whole kind of network. But also, I was about to say, Erica, even Bushman, because he has been, I think, consciously avoided by Jed McKay. He's said. So it was good to see him here in his very classic form. What are your thoughts on Bushman?
I think if he's written well, then I think he can be used anytime. But I know he's a problematic character. I mean, a lot of the especially characters of color that were coming out
hmm
of the 70s and 80s were portrayed problematically. So I know that there's an issue with using him. I think the fact that we took it straight from that particular comic, straight from issue number 3, I think anchored that.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
and
most definitely.
and I think that one of the things that I really loved about what Arif had done, who was our colorist, was, we wanted to make sure that he wasn't, sometimes he's portrayed as being very light skinned, other times he's portrayed as being very dark skinned. So we
Yeah,
wanted
no,
to
I
make
think
sure that
I think
it
the
wasn't
coloring
like,
was very good.
yeah, we weren't trying to like caricature anyone.
And I like that later on that you getting the stuff about sort of stealing stuff from other
Yeah,
countries,
like
sort
the
of
the
cultural.
colonization, the
Yeah,
artifacts and
yeah.
things. Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be said more often, and especially today, as one of our big headlines is someone was caught stealing from the British Museum. Um, to which the only comment you can say is, "Isn't everything there stolen?"
Yeah.
And so it's kind of raised the issue again. But it was quite funny having had that big conversation of people laughing about it on Twitter, and then coming to read this sort of at bedtime and go, yeah, no, I mean, like it needs to be said, and I think it also gave um an extra dimension to Bushman that we don't always see, because people, whatever we see him in the comics, people are always going to go back to the ripping the face off thing,
Yeah.
and yeah. Which I've previously said I think shouldn't always be the focus. So it's quite nice to see Bushman being Bushman without necessarily going back to that.
Yeah, I just love seeing him in action, and we do get both iterations of him. We get the Barunda, Bushman with some locks, and then there's a flashbacks when Marlene's thinking about her dad, and we see Bushman in his other form where he's basically there he is, more
Yeah.
classic there as well. So yeah, I like Bushman as well. I do see why. I do understand why Jed would say, okay, well, let's just take a break from him, because he's
Well, he's also going for much deeper dive little
Mm,
character. I mean, this is kind of he's got a long run to deal with, and this is
exactly.
sort of perfect one off to go back to. But like I said, we're missing all these characters so much that it's kind of nice to have. Very much like the Jewish funeral as well, by the way.
Oh yes,
Thank
yeah.
you.
That was yeah. Let's swing back to that one.
That's just because I'm stuck on that page. I've got it open. I'm just looking at all the old heroes
Oh, I
in their
love
old
it.
Yeah,
costumes,
I
which is
went
great.
through some old West Coast Avengers,
Yeah,
and
it's perfect.
I will say for a 30-paged comic, I mean, I try and keep my scripts, like if it's a 30-paged comic, it's a 30-page script. But
Mhm.
this was like 48 pages because I was putting reference photos everywhere. I had reference photos for every one of them. I will say, so the photographer is Peter Parker.
I thought it might be because every time you see a photographer of the right age, but
It should be yes. So the
yes,
photographer is Peter Parker, and someone asked me about the man in the military uniform. That's Frank Castle,
Oh,
right.
awesome! Wow,
I thought it could
that
be
is so
given
cool.
who we have
because
here.
he
But
had
yeah,
done. There were in that run,
yeah.
you had him teaming up with Spider-Man and with Punisher. I want to say he starts teaming up with Punisher in I think like issue 6 of that run.
Mm,
Um, and in the current run, Tigra is there
yes.
with him in the current run, so I made sure that she was there. And then you have Gina and her two boys, and her two boys are young at this point. I mean, they're
Yeah, I
not.
love that as well because
Yeah.
I did a double take of them. I was like, oh, that's Gina and her kids, and I'm like, that's smart. And then
And
they're
I made
younger.
sure that there were no flies. I said no flies around Crowley because he bathed for this.
Yeah, but
I
also
wanted,
like I
yeah.
love that he always looks the same age.
Yes,
It's like
Crowley does not age
He
ever.
it would
doesn't age.
actually hurt if he didn't always look the same age. There's
Yeah,
like something perfect about that, like
I loved it. The shout
I
out to
mean,
I want. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, well, later in this run, when with Stained Glass Scarlet,
Mhm.
Crowley actually gets hurt and goes into the hospital, and it looks almost as if they cut his hair a little bit, but
I
Yeah,
love all
I
this.
love saying Crowley. A big shout out to Wonder Man in his red and green suit. You gotta
yes,
love it. You gotta love this.
and
Um,
and in the blue with the hat, that's Ant-Man.
oh, Hank Pym, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
With
yeah.
Tigra, yeah, Tigra,
Integra-
Tigra. Sorry, I'm gonna
Yes.
do it again. Like go back to
um,
Greer.
yes. Back to Greer. Let's just say Greer. um, Erica, I'm going to throw in a question here again from one of our loonies. So, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? And that's from Anthony Sitko.
Yeah, I know, Anthony. Um, I would say 100 duck-sized horses.
Scare.
I would
Oh,
say
no.
probably one horse-sized duck because 100 duck-sized horses, I mean, they can swarm you really quickly.
Yeah, and they've got those stumpy feet.
Yeah.
Like we know from having cats that if they were standing on you, the weight that would
Oh God, yeah. And if they'll take out your legs, like if they took out your legs and then like you fall, it's over. They swarm you.
yeah.
So I would say one horse-sized duck.
Yeah, because also what's the duck gonna do? Peck at you? I mean, like, I don't know. Horses seem like more damaging. Like, I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
And one horse-sized duck, that's like 10 meals. So, sorry. Yeah, I'm
Oh
just
my
thinking.
God, yeah. Can you imagine the duck
Oh,
allurons you could have? Oh my
imagine that
God.
hanging in the barbecue like
I was
store in
gonna that
Chinatown.
hanging in the window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No.
We're getting hungry now.
Anyway, Anthony did have a chuckle himself when he sent that to me, but he did send a more serious question, and he did ask Erica, which I think you pretty much answered, but I wanted to read this out anyway. How did you determine the jump off point for the story? Like, issue 3 of Mark Spector Moon Knight. But did you always know, this was, I guess, one of your pitches, did you always know Mark was going to die? And it was just a matter of when and where.
I didn't always know Mark was going to die. There were times that I was going to have Mark
Oh, okay.
I was
Right.
going to sort of swap Mark and Marlene in terms of what happened in the desert. And then there were times that it was just going to be Mark was going to give up the mantle and Marlene was going to take it, or maybe Frenchie was going to take it on. But I wanted to focus more on Marlene just in general, because I thought that there were so many times that she was written as a damsel in distress, but then in this particular run specifically, she was written as spunky as hell. Like there's literally a scene in, I want to say, issue number 10 or 11.
Is that the trial of
where
Mark Spector?
Oh no, it's before the trial. Is it
Okay.
before or after? It might be after the trial of Mark Spector, but no, it's after because it's after he got stabbed by stained glass Scarlet and he was in a bad way,
Right.
and he was healing. So Marlene is now in this run. Marlene is flying the moon copter. She goes to pick him up from something, and he opens the car door, and her gun is there. He's like, "You mind moving the cannon?" Because she's got this big ass gun. Because Marlene like is no bullshit, excuse me, in this run, and I wanted to make sure that you saw that she was capable. And even in the specific version, even in this specific issue, as Chuck and Sal Valuto had done it, she is, kicking ass and taking names. So if you read the real Mark Spector Moon Knight #3, bikini or not, she is like kicking ass and karate chopping people and, doing all the things.
I think you're right. I think that is the run where I really cemented my love for her.
Yeah, I remember it actually, Erica. I remember the trial of Mark Spector, that arc, and I think Marlene and Frenchie. Marlene is like driving a jeep through the jungle, and she's storming through it to save Mark. So that kind of stuck with me. Like, yeah, okay, this is like a full on action flick, and she just doesn't care. Like, she's just going through soldiers. It was really good to see.
There's an I almost said episode. There's an issue where Frenchie is he is infiltrating a white supremacist group, and Marlene is kidnapped, and Frenchie tries to help her, but she ends up helping him. She ends up being the one to like take the shot. So
yeah, no, it's great. It is good that and Rebecca, as you're saying, it is a sign of the times, I guess, around the late 80s and stuff. They're starting to, I guess, realize that you can actually do these with female characters, which is really cool.
Yeah,
which is funny to me because we had Scarlet and Lady J and CoverGirl in G.I. Joe. You had Princess Leia in 1977. You had the Bionic Woman.
Yeah.
Right, but I think they were like, I guess because she was introduced more as a sort of, not as a sidekick, but as a girlfriend, that it was less seen that would be the step up. Like, you wouldn't want them over, like, doing anything that would mean your single male hero was less competent, kind of thing.
And they sometimes are that.
No, look, we all know that in reality and in comics. I mean, yeah, look at Hawkeye and Mockingbird.
Looking at you, Clint.
Yeah, we'll always look at you, Clint. But do you know what I mean? Like, so, but it does make it more remarkable when it happens, and also Marlene never really had the superhero sort of thing attached, or so. And to getting back to the comic, I think so. There's like two things that I've always wanted to happen in Moon Knight, and I won't say what the other one is because you're a writer, and we shouldn't be talking story ideas generally.
I appreciate that.
But one of them was always to be, what if someone had the avatar of Ra?
Well, I'm glad I made that. I'm glad I made that happen.
I mean, like, I obviously I didn't envisage it this way, but I think this works perfectly. It was always more like, what if that was his one of his adversaries or somebody that he had butted heads with, at least. I guess not an adversary but because obviously sun and moon, and like, why has no one ever gone there before, or not as much. And that's kind of where, when we did the Bemis thing and we had the Sun King, it's like, oh, is that where we're going? And never quite went there. But this kind of did it in so much nice, one of the ways that I had not thought about, which I think is one of those things where it's so great to see, like, you bring someone who actually is a professional at this, um, and throw them at the same kind of ideas, and that's why I think it underscores why you shouldn't necessarily like be always, oh, hey, I've got this great idea. Sometimes it's nice to just see it happen. And other things happened in Black, White, and Blood that I thought about, but this one was a very. It was done. So I liked her. I liked the name Luminary. It was everything about it. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I think it worked really well.
Well,
And
thank you for reading it and thank you for enjoying it. I mean, I will say I racked my brain about the name. I went to
I can imagine, like, that
I
must be
went to the
the
Marvel
hardest.
I went to the Marvel Encyclopedia, and I was
Mm,
looking up I was going through looking up every name, and then I was like, "Oh damn, this encyclopedia is from like 2015. It's already several years old. Now I got to go to
yeah.
Marvel Wiki and everything." And I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
using the thesaurus and everything. But yeah, I mean, I was happy with it. Yeah.
No, I think it's a really good name, yeah. And again, not one that springs to mind when you think, oh, this is in a Moon Knight comic, so are we going to call her the Sun, whatever? And it's nice to have a bit more thought go into it than that, I should say, you know, because we'd have all taken it at that. But this is I really like the name Luminary, and there's almost a kind of little bit of regret, like it would be nice to spend a bit longer with her, you know.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, tell Marvel.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give me another. Maybe I'll do a Luminary alternate world, like
God, that would be
multiverse.
great. I'm gonna email them tomorrow. Trust me. Well, when I say tomorrow, it is tomorrow for me. So when I'm having my next break from work, and like going, oh, what shall I do now? Like, what can I do now to cause mischief in the world? It'll be like, oh, I'll email Marvel.
Well, I mean, it is good, and going off what Rebecca was saying as well, Erica, really enjoyed it. I think what was really satisfying for me was that it wasn't just an obvious clear cut. Just here's a polar opposite. Here's the avatar of Ra. There are so many similarities between the avatar of Khonshu and the avatar of Ra as well. There's like a blurring of the line between the two. It's not necessarily Ra's like all happy and fun and loving. There's that sort of So I loved how they were although they're contrasted, they very much are of the same mold
I
too.
also love how the suit colors work with both.
That is Edgar went to town. He sent oh God, close to a dozen different designs,
Cool.
style designs and such. And it was really amazing. And some of the color schemes were like reds and oranges and like more bronze, and then other color schemes were closer to the gold that we had. But then there's so many different versions of gold you can have. You can have like a brownish gold or a greenish gold and everything.
Hmm.
So I mean, we just sort of like looked at everything and we're like, we like this. We love the design. The design was pretty much close from the beginning. Was pretty much close to the final design.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of like color schemes, are we going to keep the bodice mostly white like Moon
Hmm.
Knight's? And because of that, it even gave me the ability to throw in a snarky line from Bushman being like, "Did you make that out of Mark's outfit?"
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which I loved. That's such a nasty jibe. I love
Exactly.
it.
No, it's great. I love the accessories too. Like I guess the glowing the hands and
I
towards the
love the
end,
powers. I was gonna say, yeah, yeah,
yeah, these for those
Oh
that can
yeah, her
see
her
the
Trunkians of
slides.
light. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so cool. And well, I mean, if we're going to go all the way towards the end, how she kind of disposes of Bushman, that was a surprise too, and I really enjoyed that because yeah, I mean, for all intents, she was getting beaten up, and I loved again how Salazar shows you can see the bumps and bruises on her face as you kind kind of
Yeah.
zoom in. But yeah, really, really cool. So um, just also wanted to mention as well, Erica, and as you know, Looney listeners, Black, White, and Blood had come out as well. I've got my Treasury edition waiting to be picked up. I can't wait to read it.
Oh,
Like again,
we're
reread it.
like the slowest people to buy that Treasury edition. Me
Yeah.
and Ray, like literally the last people in the group to pick it up. It was like, because we're like, we've got the single issues, we'll be fine. I was like, no,
Well,
no,
the
let's
other
buy
thing,
it.
the Treasury edition is huge.
I know.
It
I
is
can't
huge,
wait.
but
I
the
can't
thing
wait.
is, so the reason that I finally bought it, because I was always going to buy it, it was never a question of it. I suddenly saw they had advertised a normal size version of the
Oh,
trade.
Oh,
really?
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it's on Forbidden Planet. And I was like, because I was doing my normal, like, what Moon Knight have I missed? So you just do a search for Moon Knight, everything comes up. That's how I found that Moon Knight versus Werewolf by Night as well, by the way. So I was like, oh, it's the normal size, and I was like, oh, does that mean they're going to stop printing? Does that mean then they're running out of Treasury editions? And they're not going to redo it? And I was like, better buy it, better buy it. So yeah, that's what
I will
finally
say
spurred me.
this. So in the Treasury edition, my name is misspelled.
Oh no, is it? Oh.
I mean,
Yeah.
collector's item, but yeah, that's
So
bad.
I'm hoping, because I haven't seen the regular sized advertised,
Right.
but I do hope that in the regular sized version, my name is
They
not
fix it.
misspelled.
Well, they should.
Well,
I mean,
I can't
surely.
remember
Come
what
on.
I'm gonna have to see if I can find it. Moon Knight.
Yeah. But I mean, while Rebecca is looking for that, Erica, I wanted to ask actually as well with the Black, White, and Blood, and with that story there, which you came on to the show
Another of
earlier.
everyone's like one of everyone's favorites, I think. So.
Yeah. But they were so different, the two stories. So the one in Black, White, and Blood focused in on, and you touched upon it earlier before, Erica, about, you know, the identities, and that was so cool with Dave Lopez. And this one obviously harks back to Mark Spector Moon Knight. What were some of the challenges of you know, approaching those two stories? What were some of their inherent challenges, I guess, and what were some of the I guess satisfying aspects of it? I guess for this one, it was getting to write Marlene, right? I mean, you mentioned how
No, specifically getting to write Marlene, and definitely a positive for both experiences was working with Martin, who was really a very good editor to work with, and Annalise and Thomas and Tom Brewer were on the short with Dave Lopez. But working with Dave and working with Edgar and Arif were really those were definitely positives. In terms of how it was different between the two, I mean, I had literally 3 times the amount of real estate for the what if. You
true,
know, I had 30
yeah,
Yeah.
pages versus 10. And both of them, both of the stories, you know, kind of had to be standalones. But in terms of the what if, I felt with the what if we really had to anchor it to something that had previously existed, because if you read the original what ifs, they literally start out almost panel by panel
They
from
do. Yeah.
another issue. Like the first 2
yep,
pages are basically recreations of the original issue, that they are going to take a twist from. And especially like if you look at like the Fantastic Four what ifs,
Yeah.
and things like that. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to, like I said, not, I mean, Edgar obviously wasn't, you know, aping Sal Valuto. I mean, he was taking what Sal Valuto had done and using that as inspiration and making sure that the styles were the same, but he was still doing his own thing. Like he wasn't going panel by panel.
Yeah.
yes,
I think the closest
yeah,
thing was that
and
first
sorry.
page. Sorry, well, I was going to say like the closest thing was that first splash page to what was actually in Mark Spector number 3. So that first splash page is probably the closest to, you know, composition wise as the original. But aside from that, I mean, I wanted to make sure that this was specifically anchored like an original type of what if. specifically anchored in a story. So that was a bit more challenging and you have to, but I mean, doing 10 pages versus 30 pages, they each have their own challenges too, because,
That's true.
you know,
Yeah.
you have to fill up 30 pages. But like I said, I mean, I had 2 extra pages that I had that whole sequence with Frenchie and Spence and everything. What was I going to cut, to make sure that those came in? So, I mean, I knew that
Yeah.
like I said, it's a comic about superheroes. We need more ass kicking. So, I know I had to cut that like real tender moment, but it happens. I have it in my heart.
We all now have it as a special extra.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it for there to be this like, I what I do basically is like keep like a Google Docs of like outtakes of things
Mm.
Oh,
because
nice.
I can always like what even if it's just like a line of dialogue or something, especially when I was working on Hollow's Eve because I did 7 issues with Hollow's Eve.
Yeah.
Um, I sort of had like outtake lines that I would have either for her or Spider-Man or Ben, um, that I would, if I was sort of racking my brain for something, I would go to that and be like, oh, you know what? I took that line out of, issue number 3 of Hallow's Eve. I can stick that into the Halloween special, or I could stick that into
Yeah.
the ASM annual. So, I mean, I have I keep all the drafts. So I have my outtakes of the Frenchie Spence, and then, Frenchie having that lovely interaction with Marlene. I have that scripted. So it's, but I mean, I was just going to say, so each one has its own challenges.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly that more compact format with Black, White, and Blood. We touched upon that as well. I guess when we had you on last time about just it's a different beast in itself. Like how
Yeah.
you pace it and stuff. And but it is always very comforting to hear that the writer of Moon Knight Tale, you've got a wealth of information. Yeah, especially for this one, you had, like you mentioned, 48 pages or so, and it's all about trying to streamline it. So there's no shortage.
And if everyone writes into Marvel
Yeah.
and gets a AU miniseries of Luminary, then who knows?
I would love
may get to
love
see
to do a
those
Luminary
moments.
miniseries. That would be amazing.
Back to Black, White, and Blood.
Yes.
It is due out on the 2nd of January.
Okay, so the
smaller
regular
version.
size.
The regular size.
Okay.
The only reason I realised it was regular size is because it's only £12, and I was like, "Oh,
Okay,
that's not the
right.
treasury." So yeah, that's so.
Yeah, I don't know what it relate. It might be like £18 over there, but for here, I think the Treasury edition is like $25, $30.
Yeah, it was £25.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's it was a bit of a stretch when I picked that up. I was like, "Ooh, do I get a discount?" I wrote one of the stories.
I know, yeah. Look, yeah. Here's my card. I'm in there.
Yeah. So that's according to Forbidden Planet anyway. There does appear to be a cheaper one, so I assume that's a normal sized version.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw. I had actually when I was at Forbidden Planet in London with one of my close friends, Fiona.
Who I know.
I got. You know Fee? Okay.
Yeah, we're good friends. So.
She
told me off for not telling you that last time, and I was like, "Oh, well, it didn't really come up."
Well, we were together. We had just had lunch. We were up in Camden, and we were going all over Hell and Creation. And we went to Forbidden Planet, and she says we go in, and she's like, "Oh, let's go downstairs and see if they have some of your comics, and you can sign them." And they carded me. They asked for ID. The manager came over. It was this like whole thing, and she's like pointing to my driver's license.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had my driver's license and my passport out and everything. She's like pointing to the name and then pointing to the comic. She's like, this person is that person. And she's like, why can't? And then she's like, well,
I can just see her face as well, like saying it.
Exactly. And it was this funny thing of like, we just don't want just any random person signing their names. And we looked at each other, we're like, is there like some like vigilante with a Sharpie like running around comic shops signing random comics?
I'm gonna suggest it to me now. So next time we go, we just randomly try and sign a comic.
Go for it. Do it. I mean, why not?
Causing trouble, Rebecca.
Apparently there is some vigilante running around like signing comics. Like
that would actually make quite a funny comic. So but That's so funny.
Erica, are we allowed to ask? Just with you mentioned like you keep a lot of the drafts, and you mentioned that you had multiple pitches to Martin when it came um, to Moon Knight. Was that all specific for the What If Dark Moon Knight, or did you have other stories that you like to tell or explore with Moon Knight that you've kind of
I
drafted?
mean,
Or
I had started pitching Moon Knight back in like 2014, 2015. I had a Moon Knight miniseries that I had pitched. And at the time, the editor was Jake Thomas, and it got up to the finish line. It almost crossed the finish line. Unfortunately, it didn't. But I mean, I had always wanted to work on Moon Knight. Chris Campana, who is a fantastic artist and friend, who's actually doing Ghostwriter now.
okay,
Chris and I, back in 2019, we pitched a Moon Knight miniseries, and it was funny because we were flying back from the convention, and we were sitting on the plane waiting and waiting and waiting, and he was sketching, and then they took us off the plane, and it was this like whole insanity of like the flight got delayed till the next day and all this other stuff. But like we were just sitting on the plane talking, and he was like sketching while we were talking, and there was a moment during the convention, that was obviously when we were leaving, but there was a moment during the convention when we were sitting on the floor in the lobby of the hotel until like 2:30 in the morning, and people were like stepping over us to get to the elevators,
oh
and
wow,
we were just like sitting on the floor just like jamming
Oh, that's
about
amazing.
a Moon Knight mini series and everything, and we like wrote up this whole pitch and everything. And when before I knew that David Lopez was assigned to draw the Black, White, and Blood story, I had floated Chris's name, and I sent along the sketch that he had done for the miniseries that we pitched. Um, and and I think that they had wanted to work with somebody who, at the time, had had a little more experience,
Mhm.
because Chris has done a lot of indie stuff, but he hadn't really done. I mean, he had done covers for mainstream for like some IDW stuff, but he had not done a lot of sequentials for more mainstream stuff at the time.
Right.
So I think they wanted to go with somebody a little more established. So when I emailed him, I said, "I'm really sorry. They assigned me an artist." And he's like, "Okay, well, he better be good." And I mean, like in a
That's
smart
such a
ass kind of
perfect
way,
yeah,
response
yeah,
because like
in a
that is
smart ass kind
literally
of
what I
way.
would say. It's like,
But
it better be good.
but I said, I was like, "It's David Lopez," and he's like, "Yeah, I can't." He's like, "Yeah, I can't beat that." So
Oh, bless
he's
him.
like, "Yeah, I will bow down to David Lopez." Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, Chris Campagna is no slouch. For those that want to check out his work, as you said, Erica, Ghost Rider, it's fantastic. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I told
yeah,
him, I was like, "Congrats, man. This is, I mean, long time coming,
yeah,
but you busted your ass for it, but really congrats." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe someday we will do our Moon Knight." I was like, I'm still holding out hope. I'd love to work
yeah.
with him again. Yeah.
Oh,
That'd be
so
great.
many stories from Moon Knight you can tell. So you know, um, are there any other like? I mean, so you've approached the Egyptian side of things, and again, Black, White, and Blood. We had the identities. Have you got any cool ideas or any appetite for? Because there's so many different sorts of Moon Knight for, like, the supernatural, like horror Moon Knight, or
I'll be honest. I was actually I enjoyed the Werewolf by Night show with Ella, well, with
Oh yeah.
Bloodstone.
yes,
I kind of wish that there was even just the slightest hint of Moon Knight in it. I know that they had Man Thing, which was great, but I would have loved to have just had the slightest hint
Yeah.
of
yeah,
Moon Knight somewhere,
yeah. We were looking for it as well.
with Jack Russell. Um, but I mean, I'm of personal belief that basically every story is the same, and what makes it unique is the characters. So like you could tell any story with Moon Knight. You just make it a Moon Knight story.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll be the first person to admit this. I don't know if I've ever admitted this before, so this might be a scoop for you. Um, but when I wrote Daredevil in 2018, and Marcio Takara was the fabulous artist on it, the story that I pitched was actually part of that story was actually based on a Batman story that I had written for Scott Snyder's class when I was in DC's New Talent Showcase. Um, so I had written a Batman one shot about a paramedic who ends up being collateral damage uh, to Batman fighting Joker. And so that piece of that, being a paramedic dying and being collateral damage, is part of the Daredevil story because Misty Knight's partner,
Hmm.
her husband, was killed in a fight between Daredevil and Bullseye. So that little piece I threw in there. So I think that there's ways to tell any story with any character, but then once you have the sort of the base skeleton, then when you start adding on to it, you make it more specific to that
Yeah.
character.
I heard a similar story. I think that was the same with Craven's Last Hunt, if I'm not mistaken, with JMD Mateus. He has said as well that he had a story that story was, I believe it was Batman, a story that he wrote, and he kind of fashioned it for Spider-Man. Like he kind of used that. It's on record. I think he said that. So I'm not I'm not trying to make things up, but yeah,
I mean, it
yeah,
makes a lot of sense, and it's
yeah.
just like you said, like a good story is a good story, and I think I think the skill uh is so that when people read it, they don't like, oh, that feels like a Batman story.
Yes,
Do you know what I
that's
mean?
right.
It's like, so you can't see the seams, and that's the skill. That's the skill of the writer is recognizing where the core of the idea versus the flavor that the character set that you're using brings to it. And I think sometimes it's done more successfully than others, but you know, often it's done very successfully.
Well, I thank you for any comparison to James DeMatteis because I mean I've read a lot of his work, but um, it's funny because when I was working on Hallows Eve, the character of Janine Godby was originally created in the Lost Years, which was James DeMatteis and JRJR.
Mm.
Ah, yeah.
So I mean I've done a deep dive into his work in the last year and a half. For this, and then when I was rereading the Mark Spector Moon Knight, he had a 5 or 6 issue arc he had written about Stained Glass Scarlet.
Yes, yeah.
So
Yes,
Scarlet
we did.
Redemption.
I
It
think
was
one of the first sets of we started doing the podcast around when the Lemire run was coming out.
mhm.
And then when me and Ray were going back to do sort of classic runs, I think we sort of honed in on all the stained glass Scarlet ones. I was like, I want to do all of the stained glass Scarlet, please. Let's do all my. It's very easy when you get to pick all your favorites. But
Yeah.
I also think I was just saying to Ray before you came on that it's kind of lovely that this issue got the Marvel Remembers John Romita corner box
Yes.
and stuff because it actually looks really nice. I mean, it looks number one, it's kind of nicer than the Stan Lee banner that they did, which was fine, but had some dissonance on some covers, looked a bit weird. Was this one? I didn't even notice it at first. I went, "Oh, it's a really nice." We've gone back to the corner box style, and then to have the memorial as well it just makes it a little bit more of a special issue.
I didn't see that originally until I saw an actual physical copy of it
Oh,
because
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I
Right.
imagine that was something that didn't happen immediately, but it looks really good.
yeah, because when you go into previews, or if you go into previews worlds or even the magazine, it doesn't have it in the
Mm.
corner box. But I like the corner boxes. If you've ever watched Mark Brooks's videos on Instagram, he's doing a whole thing about doing corner boxes and stuff.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I love
Yeah, I
the
love his
Yeah.
art as well. Yeah, and Erica, you shouldn't feel any less about being compared with James D. Mateus. We love your work. You're excellent. Actually, and I don't want to put you in any awkward positions as well, but where we've been speculating because Jed, his run seems to will be winding down soon, and we were tossing around who who would like to see as Moon Knight writers, and
You're in the running.
You're in the
Frogs. You're
running
high
there.
up, high up.
Yeah, so very highly regarded. So yeah, hopefully we can get you back for more Moon Knight. I mean, we just love your tales. It's good.
I would love to be back on Moon Knight in any capacity, whether it's a Luminary miniseries or just writing Mark, or hell, I'll write a story about Frenchie. Like I'll
Do it.
write,
Oh,
God, I
they're
would love a
good.
story about
Yeah.
Frenchie.
I'll do any of it. Just, I always joke, I say I have a mortgage and 2 very old cats that are on lots of medication. I need the job.
Yeah, definitely. Luminary should have a cat. No, I'm just kidding.
Loonies, make sure you write in. Rebecca's going
Yeah,
to do
write
it. I'm
in.
going to chuck
I am
something right
going
into
to.
Marvel. Just let them know that how much you love What If Dark Moon Knight, and let's see if we can get like a Luminary series. That'd be great.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna duck in to say like what I think is like number one, this comic by our by the community so far, from what I've seen, has been incredibly well received. Which is very funny because when we saw the original solicit, I think people were like, "Oh, Moon Knight's dead again." I have to admit that was kind of not that because after Black, White, and Blood, you have a lot of I was like, no, I really want to see, because Erica loves the character. I really want to see what happens. But like when you get one of those, oh, Mark Spector's dead again, okay.
But that was the whole thing, is Marlene says to
Yeah.
Khonshu, you could have saved him again, and you
Right.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's why I really love that. From anything you could, I always love it when you like get something like that and you buy it because it's Moon Knight, and you're like, I have no idea, it's a what if, it could be anything, and then it's just, it surpasses sort of what you imagine, because that's like when somebody's taken something and just made it better. And so I mean, the first reaction we got was from someone on Discord who said it was fantastic. I hope we see more of Luminary in the future. That was the first thing I heard of it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, because I'd already seen from the preview, I think we saw the Luminary, so I kind of knew that was happening. So it wasn't a spoiler, don't worry. I mean, it was in the spoiler thing, so it was my fault for reading it. But it was really nice to see one of the sort of big time sort of fans come in and just say, "Oh, it's fantastic," and just go, "Okay, I'm happy now." Like, I know that I can. I was always pretty happy about it. But solicits are such a weird thing, because sometimes they're like great, but most of the time I don't really read them, to be honest.
I'll be honest, it's very strange when it comes to the solicits, because sometimes the editors will ask you to write the little blurb, and then other times the editors themselves will be writing it. So if they come to you and ask you for the blurb, it's literally a book that you probably wrote, a script that you wrote 6 months ago. So then you're like, okay, well, let me go back and reread this script to figure out what blurb is going to be, because I've written 15 other things since then.
Right, and it's not immediately in your mind. And
Erica, I just want to thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's always a pleasure having you on. I've always tried to find an excuse to have you on since the first time we had you on. I had these grand plans. Rebecca knows about a game show for one of our kind of milestones.
No, if Ray mentions game shows, just say no.
I don't know. I mean, during lockdown, I had a lot of fun on a game show with it was me, Fred Van Lente, and Crystal and Dean Haspiel and a couple of other people. We did like an online game show, like a trivia game show. It was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
this was a Moon Knight trivia one Ray did for one of our things, and I was terrible at it.
You would
'cause I
smash
have
it.
no
You
memory.
would smash it, Erica.
Well, that's the thing, is I think that I would smash it, and then I would embarrass myself, and then the next thing on social media, fake fangirl.
He
You
put
know,
in a
that thing.
question just for me, and luckily I realized just at the right time that this was about my favorite Moon Knight outfit.
Yeah.
So, which is, I was like, oh, thank God. Like,
I was sweating
I'm not
there.
coming back.
I was sweating there
Yeah,
for a
I
second.
was. I was
Rebecca,
like, I'm going to be terrible. They're all going to mock me for being like, oh, girls reading comics. And it's like, no, I'm just old and I have no memory anymore.
Exactly.
So But that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, but Erica, hopefully we'll have you back again. Hopefully I can get a game show happening with you on it as well. But before we let you go as well, is there anything that you'd like to? You're writing a slew of stuff at the moment. It looks really exciting. Any titles you'd like the loonies to know about?
Well, aside from the Moon Knight What If that just came out today, but the podcast is going to be out in a few days, so hopefully you've picked it up. There's going to be another short that I'm doing that's going to be announced probably next week from Marvel. I'm doing. It's not Moon Knight, but it is another one of my favorite bucket list characters.
Cool.
There is the Daredevil Gang War that's going to run from December to March, and I'm really excited. Sergio Davia is penciling it. Sean Perkins is inking it, and I believe Celia Dela Cruz is the colorist. I'm not entirely sure, but the pages that have come in, I have already told Sergio that I'm going to go broke because I want to buy everything. So yeah, I'm really excited about the Daredevil. There's a couple of other things that are going to be announced, not Marvel related.
That's
they're going
okay.
to be announced at New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
And I'm a little nervous because the Marvel panel that I'm supposed to be on is around the same time as this other panel. And I know what's going to happen is I'm going to literally end up sprinting between the two panels and showing up like sweaty and
Jodie Hauser
panting.
had to do that at San Diego.
Yes,
Just like
that's going
run
to be
into
me.
a panel and say, "I'm really sorry." Like, yeah.
That's going to be me. I'm going to be like, I'm sorry, I'm late. Yeah, kind of thing.
To be honest, I think it's quite good because it means you get to make an entrance.
Oh,
That's you
Well,
have
I
to
will
see it that way.
say-
I get to make an entrance.
I will say this other panel, not the Marvel panel, but the other panel, the person that would be running this panel makes an entrance just by their mere existence. So I don't know if I could ever stand them up.
Cool.
Like,
I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, it's worth trying, though. You know.
I don't know. It's a tough sell on that.
We'll
But
look
yeah,
forward to hearing about it, yeah.
I'm on all of the social medias because there's 4,000 of them now.
There really
Yes.
So I'm everywhere. I'm Blue Sky and Threads and all the things. So it's either Erica Schultz 42 or Erica Schultz Writes. And yeah, people want to go to my website, ericaschultzwrites.com. I've got tons of books there. I've got my image work. I have Marvel work. I have work on, any other stuff that I've done, Red 5 and Dynamite and DC and things like that. So yeah, I got 2 old cats and a mortgage.
Not the mortgage and the 2 cats, but everything will be in the show notes. There'll be links there for you listeners to check out. Yeah, Erica's stuff. She's doing some great stuff. Looking for Loving Hallows Eve, this Amazing Spider-Man Annual. I know, and you mentioned as well X-23 Deadly Genesis. Some great stuff. Marvel side. So yeah, I mean, pick up your copy if you haven't already, loonies. Go check it out. Keep your eyes peeled on our social medias as well for next issue or next episode. Oh God, I get them mixed up as well. But once again, thanks, Erica. Rebecca, it's always a pleasure.
Yes, good to speak to you again. And next time, it'll be soon. It's like there's so many Moon Knight issues this month.
know.
It'll be like next week or something, probably.
I think they're
So-
double shipping. That's why.
We have there's 4 issues out this month. So
Yes, I want more.
yeah. So, probably 4 next week because I'm including City of the Dead and this and
Yes.
everything
And the
else. I don't
annual,
remember
there's an
when
annual
somebody-
out as
the
well.
annual. That's the
Yeah.
other one. The annual.
Yeah. But yeah, with that, everybody have a good week. And as always, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.